Hi guys, in this video I'll be creating CRUD APIs and store them temporarily inside Python list data type. Let's get started. Inside models.py let's create schemas. For that I need base model. From pydantic import base model. A schema is for validating the nodes. Class node schema I will inherit it from base model class. Node object will have a title of string, a description of type string as well, and is completed of type boolean. So the default value we can set it to false. Finally we can create a field called created at, so it will be of type date. So for that let's quickly import date from datetime. Then let's use it. So created at will be of type date. The next step is to create a class for DB integration. Let's say class node DB inherited from node schema class. It will have a single attribute ID which will be of type integer. Inside db.py from app.api import models, and then let's create a mock DB. We'll be using Python list. Let's call it nodes list, which is a list of models.nodedb, and let's initialize it to an empty list. Let's open notes.py and close db.py. Okay, so before that we have to create a file called crud.py. We'll be using this file for creating all the database logics. From FastAPI let's import API router. Then from app.api.models import node schema and node DB. Create a router instance for the API router. This router instance is actually a decorator. Let's create a post endpoint. So from the router decorator let's call the function post. We can pass the URL endpoint as well as the response model. So the response model will be of type nodedb. Then create a function which will be invoked when this API is called. We'll be receiving a payload, so let's receive it as node, and its type will be of node schema. First step is to post the data to the database, which will be handled separately by this post function inside crud.py. So first let's import crud from app.api. The post function will return us the node ID. Then let's create the response object. Then we can return the response object to the user. Let's go ahead and create the post function inside crud.py. we'll be needing the model schemas as well as the temporary DB. Let's import those. Let's create a function post, and it will receive a payload of type node schema. The next step is to create a key called ID. Since I cannot add ID to the payload, I'm creating a new dictionary called note and copying all the value from the payload. Once the dictionary is created, we can go ahead and create the ID. If we are posting for the first time, the list will be empty, so we can assign a value of 1 to the ID. If the length is not 0, then we can take the last element of the list, access its ID, and increment the value by 1. This will be the new ID. Append the newly created note to the nodes list and return the note ID. Save the files and go to main.py. Here, import the newly created nodes from app.apa and use the same syntax to include the APIs from nodes. In addition to it, we can add a prefix if we want. I'll be using /nodes as the prefix. So basically we'll be calling /nodes and the API endpoints that we used inside notes.py. Let's start the server. Oops, there's an error. Okay, I think we need to remove the / in the prefix. Okay, yeah, now it's running. We can see the newly created Notes API. Let me refresh it once. Okay, let's try it out. Okay, this is a sample payload. I will change some values and then post it. Okay, we are facing some error. Let's check notes.py. Okay, I think there is a typo. Okay, let's save it. Okay, it's running. Let me re-execute. Voila, it's posted. Next, I will create an endpoint to retrieve a single node. Let's call the get method from the router decorator, and we can get the ID from the query parameter by using the syntax. Then pass the response model. It will be the same as post. We will be passing note db. Then create a synchronous function. I will call it read note, and I'll be getting an ID. It will be of type int. This variable name should match with the one above. Let's first create a variable called note and call crud.get. We will be creating this function soon and pass in the ID. So if the function returns none, which means if there is no note under the ID, then we will raise an exception. we'll be using HTTP exception from FastAPI. Let's import it. And we'll be passing the status code 404. And we'll be passing the detail note not found. If the note is found, we'll be returning the note. Okay, let's create the note function inside CRUD.py. We'll be getting the ID. Filter the nodes list based on the ID. I'm using a lambda function for filtering. Filtered list will be an empty array if there is no match. If a match is found, filtered list will be a list of dictionary. So I'm returning the first item inside the list. Else, I'm just returning none. Okay, let's save. I think we got an error. It's a typo. There is another typo. Okay, let's save. Yeah, now it's working. I'll create a new note. Note is created. I'll try to fetch it. ID is 2. Yeah, the fetch is successful. Let's get all the note. Same thing. Invoke get. This time without any ID. Since we will be getting all the notes, we don't need any ID. This time the response model will be a list of node db. Create a function. I'll call it as read all note. I won't be needing any parameters. I'll be returning crud.get all. We need to create this function. So go to crud.py and create this function. So I'll be simply returning the list. Okay, the server is running. We got the new endpoint. One thing to note is that whenever we reload the server, the temporary DB, which is a Python list, will be empty. So I'll be creating a new note. Okay, the note is created. I'll be creating another one. Okay, cool. So 2 nodes are created. Let's execute the get API. Okay, we are getting the 2 nodes that we posted. Next, I'll be creating an API for updating a single node. For that, I'll be using the put function from the router decorator. I'll be needing an ID, and I'll be passing the response object. So it will be equal to nodedb. Let me create a function here. I'll call it update node, and I'll be receiving an ID as well as the payload that needs to be updated. So the type will be of node schema. So the first step is to check whether the node exists with the ID. So we'll be using the get function from the crud.py. If it returns none, then there is no node with the ID. So we'll be raising a HTTP exception with a status code of 404 and a description saying that node not found. Otherwise, we will be getting the node ID. So we need to create a function called put, which we'll do later. We'll be passing the ID as well as the payload. Say if the function is successful, then we'll be creating a response object. We can create the put function. We'll be receiving ID as well as payload. I will iterate through the nodes list to get the node that needs to be updated. The ID parameter received should match the ID key of the node. Then I'll be updating the filtered node using the payload parameter. Once the update is done, then break out of the loop and return the ID of the node. Save the file, no errors. Okay, so I need to post a note. Okay, let's execute. The note is posted. Okay, I will try it out and enter the ID of the node. So I'll be copying the same payload. Here I'll be changing the is completed to true and I will execute. Yeah, so the note is updated here. Finally, I'll be creating an API to delete a single note. I'll be calling the delete function from the router decorator. I'll be receiving an ID and I'll be defining the response model. It will be the same, node db. I'll define a function delete node and I'll be getting ID as a parameter. First I'll be calling the get function from crud.py to check if the node exists. If it returns none, I will be raising an HTTP exception. If the node exists, then I will call the delete function from crud.py. Then I will return the note. Okay, let's create the delete function. I'll be receiving ID. So similar to the put, I'll iterate through the list to get the note that needs to be deleted. Since I need the index, I'll be using the range function. If the ID matches, then I'll just delete that particular note. And I'll return the ID. Server is running. As usual, I will just post a note. Okay, it is posted. I will also post a second note. Okay, let's confirm if there are two notes. Okay, we do have two notes here, one with ID 1 and 2. I'll try to delete the note with ID 2. Execute. Okay, we are seeing that it is deleted here, the 200 response. Let's go and confirm again. Yeah, we do have the note deleted. We are having only one note with ID 1. Let me also delete the first note. Okay, it is deleted. If I try again deleting a note that doesn't exist, it will throw error. As you can see, the note list is empty. That's it for this video. In the next video, we'll be integrating Postgres database. Thank you.